Look, folks, before we go too far, I've got something to tell you.
Excuse me, but I've got something to tell you first. Thank you for ruining my life!
Ashley!
What did you do?
Everybody's always blaming me for everything.
Mara, there's a beginning of an economic bust like it happened in 2008. Trump's not responsible for that, but he'll get blamed for it, that sort of thing. So I think things are out of control of an individual like this. So it's not what should Trump do. The country is bankrupt, and doing what they're doing, the establishment, Republicans and Democrats, I mean, they have always gotten together with these omnibus bills and these continuing resolutions, and they always spend more money. They endorse intervention overseas, they endorse the financial system, the Federal Reserve, but it's not because all of a sudden Trump isn't sticking to his word. It's the fact that the country is addicted to spending. I think that no matter what we put up in Washington, we're going into a very, very dire economic problem, and I think our empire is going to end, and unfortunately the whistleblowers are going to be attacked more than ever. But in the end, what we need is a whole generation of people advocating and understanding what liberty is all about.
Do you think there's any way to turn around economic collapse now? And where do you see all this militarism going? Where do you see this planet going?
Well, in theory, you can. I mean, if you had the right people in the right places and in the Congress, you could devise a transition, actually, and that's what I talked about in the presidential races, where you could do it as a transition.
Phase out.
You would have to systematically cut back. The odds of that happening are essentially nil. So what we have to do is continue to present the case for the cause of liberty, to replace the system that will self-destruct. I mean, there was no self-planning about how to get rid of communism and the communist system. And
the old empire just fell.
It just happened. It fell apart, and it wasn't because we built more weapons. It was a flawed system. Our system is flawed. It will collapse. We probably won't have enough good sense to just cut back, because the people who are dependent on the government, and like I said, the rich and the poor become dependent.
Sure.
So when the collapse comes, we have to have enough people understanding what true liberty is all about, and we have to advance the cause of liberty more so than even the advancement we had at the time of our revolution.
So you think it's fair to say Trump is not averting the collapse and it's closer than ever?
Well, I think it's not relevant. I don't think anybody in Washington at the moment is very relevant because I think what people are thinking and learning in their schools and where they're getting their information,
the fight's on the ground.
Is relevant, and trying to get some young people to be involved to help with the
Sure. Then last question: aren't you concerned historically as a historian, not just a doctor and a former congressman, but I know you're with the Von Mises Institute as an economist and historian. Don't governments and empires almost always launch a war before they let themselves fall? China's teetering, EU's teetering even worse than us. We're teetering. We're the best house in a bad neighborhood. This just, if you look at this historically and project forward, this is like a dystopic novel, what we're going into.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether it's that deliberate, but the war is related. I think the wars bring you to the destruction, and we've been involved for all these years, and we're involved steadily right now, and that's totally out of control. So that will bring it. Yeah, they might try to make a bigger war, but by the time it's recognized how bad off we are, they won't be able to. So war is related, but the wars have already been there, and that's hurrying up the destruction of the economy, and it will bring us down economically.
Sure.
If a former Reagan administration official is correct, we are likely to see the next major financial collapse by the end of 2017, according to Wikipedia. David Stockman is an author, former businessman and US politician who served as a Republican US representative from the state of Michigan, 1977 to 1981, and as the director of the Office of Management and Budget, 1981 to 1985, under President Ronald Reagan. He has been frequently interviewed by mainstream news outlets such as CNBC, Bloomberg, and PBS, and he is a highly respected voice in the financial community. Like other analysts, Stockman believes that the US economy is in dire shape, and he told Greg Hunter during a recent interview that he is convinced that the S&P 500 could soon crash by 40% or even more.
You think a government shutdown could implode the financial system?
Yeah, I definitely think that. Now, I doubt whether he'll go for a shutdown by choice. In other words, the Mitch McConnells and Speaker Ryans are not going to stand for it. They have this really, I think, false idea that they prove Republicans can govern by keeping the Washington Monument open, even if we're bankrupting the country and piling spending upon spending and borrowing more and more money. So I don't think they're going to elect to have a shutdown. But what I think is going to happen instead is they're going to run out of borrowing authority under the debt ceiling. You know, it's now frozen after March 15. We had this phony holiday for a year and a half, but after March 15, it locked in at 19.8 trillion, which means that when they run out of cash, which will be in a few months, then they're going to need a majority in both houses to vote through a multi-trillion-dollar increase in the debt ceiling. I don't think they have the votes. I don't think the Freedom Caucus is going to vote for that. I think they don't have a prayer of getting any Democrat votes for it. If they do, Trump will be forced to give up almost everything that he's trying to accomplish by way of tax cuts or the rest of his agenda. So I think that's when the rubber is going to meet the road, when they have to raise the debt ceiling. It'll make the crisis that we had in the summer of 2011 look like a Sunday school picnic. Well, there'll be panic in the financial markets, I'll say that, because this is not priced in any sense of the word. The market isn't expecting it, and I think it will really cause some very difficult times. I just see no way around it. The market is pricing itself for perfection for all of eternity. Well, this is crazy, okay? We've got, as you were talking about, we got headwinds everywhere. The auto industry is now starting to roll over. The red Ponzi in China, it's only a matter of time before that explodes. We now have debt for the household sector back above where it was before the 2008 crisis. I could go on to list all the indicators, but the point is, I think the market could easily drop to 1,600 or 1,300 by 40% or even more once, the fantasy ends. The government shows its true colors, that is, it's heading for a fiscal bloodbath. And this crazy notion that there's going to be some great Trump tax cut and fiscal stimulus is put, to rest once and for all. it's not going to happen. They can't pass a tax cut that big without a budget resolution that incorporates 10 or 15 trillion of debt over the next decade. And, it's just not going to pass. And all of this, I think, is fantasy that, week by week, slowly the market is beginning to figure this out. Now, what it means is all the insiders, the corporate insiders, are selling their stock like there's no tomorrow. We're at record levels of insiders selling. Institutional sales of stock have been basically going on ever since shortly after the election. What we have here is the usual end of the cycle. Call the retail investor to the slaughter. The home gamers, the people that listen to Jim Cramer and that sort of thing, are buying stock or they're buying ETFs. But I think this, is the greatest suckers rally we've ever seen.
But even more alarming is what Stockman had to say about the potential timing of such a financial crash. According to Stockman, if he were to pick a time for the next major stock market plunge, he would target sometime between August and November.
The S&P 500 is going to drop by hundreds and hundreds of points, sometime, I think, over the next few months as we drift into this unexpected crisis.
Do we think we have a crash before the end of the year? I mean, is that here, Andy?
Absolutely.
Big crash before the end of the year. Would you target fall?
Yeah, I would target sometime between August and November, because that's when the rubber is going to meet the road on a debt ceiling increase, when they're out of cash, when Washington is going to really end up in vicious political conflict over what to do about the debt ceiling.
Without a doubt, the US financial system is living on borrowed time, and we cannot keep going into so much debt indefinitely. In 2017, interest on the national debt will be more than $500 billion for the first time ever, and it will be even higher next year because we are likely to add at least another $1 trillion to the debt during the fiscal year. Meanwhile, the financial markets just keep becoming more absurd with each passing day. Just look at Tesla. This is the company that somehow managed to lose $620 million during the first quarter of 2017, and it has been consistently losing hundreds of millions of dollars quarter after quarter. And yet, somehow, the market values Tesla at a staggering $48 billion. It is almost as if we are living in an opposite world, where the money you lose, the more valuable investors think that you are. Companies like Tesla, Netflix, and Twitter are burning through gigantic mountains of investor cash without ever making a profit, and nobody seems to care. Commercial mortgage-backed securities are another red flag that is starting to get a lot of attention. The percentage of commercial mortgage-backed security, MBS, loans in special servicing hit 6.6% to close April. Commercial Mortgage Alert responded, citing TREP data. The 5 basis points move higher from March came as the past due rate on Fitch-rated commercial mortgage-backed securities, CMBS, climbed by 9 basis points, to end April at 3.5%. Both MBS and CMBS rates hit their highest levels since 2015. During the crisis of 2008, regular mortgage-backed securities played a major role, and this time around it looks like securities that are backed by commercial mortgages could cause quite a lot of havoc. One of the reasons for this is because male owners are having such tremendous difficulties. The number of retail stores closing in 2017 is on pace to shatter the all-time record by more than 20%. And Bloomberg is projecting that about 1 billion square feet of retail space will eventually close or be used for another purpose. So, needless to say, this is putting an enormous amount of strain on those that are trying to rent space to retailers, and a lot of their debts are starting to go bad. In 2007 and early 2008, a lot of analysts that were loudly warning about mortgage-backed securities, a major stock market crash, and an imminent recession were being mocked. People kept asking them when the crisis was finally going to arrive, and leaders such as Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke confidently assured the public that the US economy was not going to experience a recession. But of course, then we got to the fall of 2008, and all hell broke loose. Investors suddenly lost trillions of dollars, millions of jobs were lost, and the US economy plunged into the worst recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Now we stand poised on the brink of an even worse disaster. The US national debt has almost doubled since the last crisis, corporate debt has more than doubled, and all of our long-term economic fundamentals have continued to deteriorate. The only thing that has saved us in our ability to go into enormous amounts of debt, and once that debt bubble finally bursts, it will be the biggest standard of living adjustment that Americans have ever seen. So I don't know if Stockman's timing will be 100% accurate or not, but that is not what is important. What is important is that decades of exceedingly foolish decisions have made the greatest economic crisis in American history inevitable, and when it fully erupts, the pain is going to be absolutely off the charts. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to our channel and make sure to join our notification squad. God bless you.